It's real. It's so good every time.
I do really think
I know.
YouTube
Every
intro
time.
it
Every
gives me
time.
life.
It makes you feel good.
It does make. I mean, so welcome to this episode of the Tell Us More About podcast.
We back.
We back
Again.
after a brief hiatus. I know that you were listener. You were waiting on bated breath. Like, when will the next
Pining for us.
episode launch? And wait no longer. Look no further. The reality is, I think there's an episode that's going to drop before this one. So
for sure. But
everyone's gonna be like, what are you talking about? Maybe we hop this one and then put the next one. That's
we
not
have to change the name, though.
Change the name. Alas, Miles.
Yeah, man.
What are we?
We're going to talk about today something you've had a lot of experience in the last couple of weeks, and that's putting miles on the road.
Putting miles on the road.
And not miles in like me, but MILES.
Yeah.
Just covering distance.
Yeah, so we bought a car when we moved to town, and in the first year, I think we put like 9,000 miles.
Oh, killing it.
In the last month, I think I put like 4,000 or so.
Yeah.
So we doubled, or 1.5 times whatever our last year's rate was.
So that's long distance driving. That's not a road trip.
Yeah, and so I think I'm going to defer and follow you on this episode, but I think potentially that those are two distinctions, because when I heard you say, let's talk about long trips, I'm imagining you're talking about these adventures that you've taken out into, the big states in the West.
Some dumb stuff.
And it's
some real dumb
fun,
stuff.
and you have a goal and objective.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm going to show up with my own baggage of, Google Maps says it's 11 hours to New Jersey. Can we do it fast?
Those are different goals. And there are different kinds of road tripping, especially if you have kids or you're like, if it's a profession, because there are some times that I drive that is for work. So I have offices here. I have one in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is about 2.25 hours away. Then I have one in Charleston. And so there have been times where I drove 4 and some change to Charleston just to have a 20-minute meeting, turn around, and come right back.
Ooh,
yeah. So those were the early days when you're trying to get that paper, trying to get those clients.
Well,
but
Charleston. We just this past weekend I was in Charleston. That ride felt both incredibly short and
it
very
really
long.
is, because to get from my current office to my office at the time,
it's like one turn.
I literally took 2 lefts, got on the interstate. I took 1 left, got on the interstate, drove 4 hours and some change, got off on East Bay Deli. So or East Bay Street,
where the deli is, right there.
Where the deli is. Our office is across from East Bay Deli, which is one of the reasons why we got that one as our office. I wouldn't even have to turn. You would just get off on the exit and it would loop you around. And I took 1 right into the parking lot of my office.
Okay.
And so it was... But yeah, that's just long distance driving. That's not road tripping.
Okay.
But all of that is important, and I want to talk about, because there's a different mentality you bring to each one of them.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing your take on it. So, and my little bits of baggage is that my grandfather was a truck driver, owner, operator, built a trucking company. My brother, when we were kids, would play with what are the little trucks,
not
Legos, but the ones
blank.
for cars.
I just went blank. I can't get past Micro Machines the whole day.
So my brother played with trucks when we were
Hot
kids.
Wheels.
Wow. So he had Hot Wheels. We had the big trucks that were like every year there was a Christmas truck, and so he would play with trucks. I would play with like footballs, and he's now a truck driver. All these years later, just started a couple years ago. And so my dad's
a over the road
amazing
trucker. Yeah.
So Joe doesn't like over the road as much as like having a home base.
Okay.
But my grandfather was over the road. He was in California for sometimes like I'm hearing some stories after the last couple of trips where it like months. Yeah. Like there was one run where he was like something happened and then they couldn't pick up a load that he was supposed to, and he was supposed to do something, and it had been 30 days between calls home.
Oh wow!
And like when he called, he's like, I left the phone off the hook while your grandmother just ripped into me. Can you imagine?
not having
the 70s or
oh,
the early
my
80s?
Word.
And he's like, yeah, well, I had to load, and then we were running short on time, and it just didn't text. There was no text messaging. And so he put
I
extra
wouldn't want to be able to do that phone call. Yeah. You got to make that one a collect call. That way that way the wife knows she's paying for it.
But anyway, I come from a pedigree of people who drive long distances. I don't pretend to be one of those, but
what's your longest drive to date?
We just did it
straight. Okay.
Yeah, from
which was
North Carolina, from Asheville to Madison, New Jersey, and that is it took us 10 hours and 6 minutes.
Okay.
And that's with 5 stops.
I was about to say, okay.
But we were like SEAL teams going in, using the bathroom, refilling on gas, and out less than 10 minutes every stop. So 9 hours probably, wheels moving.
Okay. Wow.
Average speed 73 miles.
Who dictates when the bathroom breaks happen? Strongest or weakest bladder?
That's a good question. I think it's relatively a collective choice. I try and put about 2 hours before we stop every time. And so not overly thought out, but I'd be open to hearing we each hold it a little longer, and try and find
well, you're young, your bladder's not as wore out.
Exactly.
You don't have kids.
Our gaskets, our O-rings are still.
One of the things, what about, so when you were leaving for that trip, and again, yours was that you had to do a long distance drive. You weren't doing a road trip.
Right.
And so did you have time to think about, we need to get snacks, or it was just get on the road as fast as you can and go?
There was time to do a little bit of prep stuff. So, this first trip up to New Jersey was there was more time, and then the second trip was less time. On the first trip up to New Jersey, like the day before I went, got an oil change. I checked the tire
because that was
pressure.
a planned trip.
Okay. So checked the tire pressure, and then it was like 13 days later, just took turned around and did it again. And so I knew that some of the slightly more important stuff, like is the car in good shape, and like, or I know the oil's fresh. I know that we got a full tank. Sarah handles most of like calorie planning.
Okay, all right.
And I just my job is the car going to be able to do it? Yeah. And that's a very loose perspective. I text you and say, hey, the people at Valvoline are saying I need to do my rear differential. What the hell does that mean? You're like, wait.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, yeah, you can. It's just fine. You don't need it right now. We can do that in the driveway. Super easy.
Sure.
But yeah, that's so. When possible, I take a very calculated approach to road tripping, and so that would be. Just because of the nature of how I travel with family, and we have to, because we know we're going somewhere, and so we have some time. I think the longest I've ever driven with children was 9 hours. We did Disney straight from Asheville to Orlando.
Wow.
And so that one took a little bit, but yeah, you've got a plan. Bathroom breaks just happen when they happen, especially when the kids are young, but you got to have plenty of snacks. I will say, having had kids in the age of DVDs in cars is amazing. That definitely helps with the sanity and helping enjoy the quality of life for a road trip. My kids have gotten a little older now, so some of them have personal electronic devices that they download shows to and watch, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's a much more calculated kind of thing for me when it's the family. When it's just me driving for work, I keep 3/4. If I get below a half tank of gas just driving around town, I get nervous. So I'm always basically on full, and the range of any of my automobiles is long enough that I could drive to Charleston and back and never have to stop for fuel. And so I think
it's an interesting point.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
is that like
well, it becomes a point of demarcation. So like if like prior to my 40th birthday, the longest stretch I had ever had straight, I drove 17 hours straight. We lived in Key West, so we would drive from Key West, Florida. This was so stupid, but fun. I graduated from Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina. You say it with the P, but it's spelled Clemson. And from Key West to Clemson is 16 hours, 16 and a half hours. So Clemson has a rather robust tailgate college football scene, and
For sure.
we would leave after work. We would leave early from work on a Friday. One of my coworkers went to Clemson as well from Key West. So we would pick his brother up in Miami, which is on the way, and then myself and my wife would drive after work. We would leave at 4:00 on a Friday. We would drive all night long, straight through. We would get to Clemson about 10 o'clock in the morning, tailgate all day, football game all day, pass out at 8 in the morning, wake up pass out like 8 at night, 9 at night, wake up at like 4 in the morning and start driving back and get home Sunday at like midnight.
Oh, to be in your 20s again.
Yeah, and we did that probably, I don't know, 5-6 times.
There's a certain like vigor of a 20-year-old road trip.
Yeah.
That
for sure, especially like that. And then we would drive just to go see family. I'd just hop in the car and drive 16 hours. Because at the time there was no direct flight from Key West to anywhere. You had to go Key West to Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta or Charlotte, and then catch a local to Greenville Spartanburg. And so if the amount of travel was almost equal to 16 hours of air travel.
Wow. And especially, I mean, today I'm kind of defaulting towards it's going to be a ride for me.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather not sit in
absolutely. If
steel petri dish.
If it's less than 8 hours, my without question, my if it's less than 8 hours, I'm driving. Because you can, if it's less than an 8-hour drive, I'll just drive it, because by the time you get to the airport early, wait, and if you have one layover, it's going to be an all-day thing. Yeah. And given the current, health condition,
germ climate.
Yeah.
And then I think but for me, part of it is like, a money multiplier. I don't want to say I'm a penny pincher, but I do run some
cheat.
Cost calculations. and one of the thoughts was just like, even on Allegiant, which is affectionately known as the Greyhound of the Sky.
Oh man, it's awesome.
Right. And there are directs from Asheville to Newark, which is 20 minutes from my parents, 25 minutes.
You're flying a crap airline into a crap airport.
But the thought on that is, if you get it early enough, it's like a $50 round trip flight or something insane, and then you got to pay for a seatbelt. But the last minute flight was like $180 a person.
Yeah.
And we didn't know when we were exactly going to want to come back. And I was just like, I'm going to get up north. It's time, but it's $65 of gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you're in control of everything.
Yeah.
And that's my thing when it comes to like travel is, I want to say it's a control issue, but the idea of variables, and like I can control, if I'm driving, a dramatically more number of variables than I can while flying. Because if you're flying, you're just at the mercy. Like I flew into Atlanta trying to catch the connecting to Charlotte once, and they just flat out canceled the flight, and it was the last one, and they were booked for the next 2 days, and they said, well, this was Sunday night. They said Wednesday morning we can put you on a flight.
Whoa.
So I had to walk back home. So I had to drive from Atlanta past Asheville to Charlotte to pick up my car to drive back to Asheville. And so it was, I rented a minivan with 6 other people. I did not die. It was nice.
That's a movie.
Strangers. Yeah. It was awesome. It was actually a really good time.
Like Christmas. It's like a Christmas movie where they trains, planes, automobiles.
Oh yeah. You're right. God, Danny DeVito and is that Sylvester Stallone in that? Or is that? I can't remember. That was a good one.
But I can't.
No, that's Throw Mama from the Train. I'm thinking about.
I was like,
that was a good movie too. No, that's gonna make it in the show notes.
With links to each of those trailers. In particular, I imagine those trailers are like, it's Christmas in Chicago. Overly dramatic.
Sorry. Throw Mama from the Trains. I would maybe say better than Planes, Trains, but I think it's important for me to outline like the different types of long distance driving. And the mentality, it's a different mentality, because a road trip, especially a road trip with your friends, like that should be a life experience.
Yeah. The closest thing that we ever had was a couple college trips where we went from New Jersey to Kiowa Island.
Ooh, okay.
Which is just, east
Oh, I know.
of Charleston for all you
That's a bougie place.
It is a bougie place, and it was amazing. And so
It's a private island.
Private island. Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah.
Movie was shot there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book. Great.
I think it's owned by a development company out of New Jersey now, because when the Kiowa Island Partners developed it, anyway, they were local guys, and I think now they got bought out by Charlotte people now. That's what it is. It used to be New Jersey.
Yeah, I knew nothing of this place. My high school friends.
You should have just gone straight to Myrtle Beach.
You think?
Yeah, man.
For better college.
Oh yeah, man, for real.
I think that's fair. But like that was the longest, and we did it in legs, and it's fun, and you buy junk food.
Yeah.
Different experience. We're getting waters when Sarah and I do it. Like staying hydrated.
Okay.
I did about a quarter of a tank. I kept it about 3/4 the whole way up.
Yeah.
And part of me, I'm trying to game gas prices. So I'm like, all right, we can't stop here. There's only one gas station.
Yeah. Do you use a gas? What gas app do you use?
I don't use a gas app. I use my best guesses. So is Gas Buddy.
Gas Buddy is what I'll use. Yeah.
So it's iPhone only, Apple only. So on my phone, it's not possible. Sarah could have been looking it up, but I think.
Well, we clearly know who the brains of the relationship is.
But that's one of the things that I think about. I'm like, I want multiple gas stations at this exit because my assumption is that there's going to be some economic variables that pull the prices down by a cent or 2 cents, and then I'll do a little homework beforehand and like really keep the tank topped up in southern states, which are a little bit less expensive gas than northern states.
You're welcome.
There was when I remember when we were young, New Jersey is a funny state because
you can't pump your own gas in New Jersey.
They pump gas for you. I didn't know of any other thing, but relative to like Pennsylvania at one point when we were kids, New Jersey would pay you 24 cents a gallon to pump your gas. Like the gas was so much cheaper in New Jersey than Pennsylvania, and someone else was pumping it for you. It didn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am curious. Childhood road trip memories. Was your family a big road tripper?
Yeah. So but it was relative. The road trip that we did every year was to a beach town in southern New Jersey.
Okay.
So we're from like northern New Jersey, dead center of the northern part of New Jersey, and we would go. People like to joke, what exit off the Turnpike and or the Garden State Parkway, and it's actually a pretty good way to identify just how north or south you are in the state. And so we would go from exit 142 to exit 4.
Okay.
And that's 300 miles. New Jersey is a small state, but it's a relatively long state. And so, Cape May County, New Jersey is the southernmost county, and we would drive down there those 3 hours, 30 minutes, depending on how many bathroom breaks. And I sat facing backwards in a station wagon for most of the, most of the trip.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, that kind of memory.
Yeah,
I have those too. My family were big. My dad and we vacationed with another family, and the worst trip we've ever, and they were all awful. And my dad and his friend just were just two dudes taking some kids on a vacation, and they had bought a combination VCR TV that was like, I don't know, this was in the 90s, so this was hot technology back in the day, but they rigged up an inverter so they could power it so we could watch VHS tapes while going down the road.
Wow.
And the distance of time we had left was the reference for time we had left was based on the number of movies.
Yeah.
So like 3 more movies. Oh, okay. But that sounds great until I tell you the second part of the story is where we were typically all the children, which there were like 6 of us, riding in the back of a truck that had a camper shell.
Oh my God.
And down the interstate, and all the parents were in the front. And we had a mattress so we could lay down and go to sleep if we wanted. But the worst one we ever did was the Okefenokee Swamp in Florida.
That's a song.
Yeah, there's some stuff about Okefenokee, and it was a massive haul. It had to be 10 hours. I don't even know. I'd need to Google search it.
Yeah.
It felt like days that we sat in the back of that truck, hot, watching movies, going down, and everything just loud. But no, my family, like, road trips, I have those as vivid memories as a child, and those have influenced my road tripping decisions growing up.
Yeah.
Now that
And,
I'm an adult.
and so what, like, one of the ways that I think about things is like, what, I don't know, what kind of baggage or what kind of ticks do I have as a result? And so, like, I know that my dad road trips with like higher levels of anxiety than are necessary. And I think that part of like sometimes I have that where it's like, for one of these trips, and I don't remember, for the second one was a sudden one. I know now, I'm like, Sarah, let's just talk through tomorrow morning. Right?
Okay.
Like, let's create a time. I want to make sure that we're on approximately the same timeline. And
gonna have an agreement, not an expectation.
Exactly. So like, we
shout out to the
relationships episode. So like, let's like co-create this morning, and let's just say like we thought it was going to be a 10 o'clock departure. 10 o'clock plus 10 hours on the road gets us home at around 8. 8 at that point of the year was like just around dusk or sundown. Yeah. And ideally on a long ride, I'd prefer to leave during the darker hours and arrive in light than leave in light and arrive in dark hours.
Yeah.
Personal choice. 10 o'clock is coming up and I'm like, we're not leaving at 10. And I just start feeling this level of stress that's not necessary to feel. And I should know better. Like, I should know that it's coming. But the reality is that I almost can't control it. I had to talk through it. And it got to the point where it's 11 o'clock. We wanted to pick up coffee before leaving, go to the coffee place. Sarah doesn't have a mask. I get a text. I'm going back.
No
so
mask.
I go back to get the key, and then we don't have the key, and then there's this thing, and we're circling back. And I'm like, okay, is this a sign that we shouldn't leave?
The spiral of death has started, and you're just going down the drain.
Yeah, is this a sign like there's nowhere to be except for like with my family when we get there?
Yeah.
Is this a sign that it's not meant to happen this morning or today? And I was like, get out of your own head. It's 1 hour. Just start driving and everything's fine. And so with that, I'm wondering, are there any ticks that you've picked up or lessons, strategies, or otherwise? Because there were a couple that come to mind as I thought about what lessons I've learned on long rides.
Yeah, for me, I like to have, prior to a departure of a road trip, I try to have my car or truck clean. I try to run it through the car wash, vacuum it out, get it looking good so I feel good during the trip. I don't know why that's important to me. Obviously get fueled up. I do adopt a little bit more of the Captain Ron mentality. So that's a great movie. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen out there. And so I'm not so sweat. My whole family's always driven older cars. And so we might have had some road trips that we've needed to stop and replace the alternator on the side of the road, things like that.
I don't even know what that means.
But, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen out there. I do like to have good cockpit management, meaning I like to have, not a lot of stuff around. So kids, when they come in with their bags, they're bringing bags on bags. And, they got some bags in the back. They got some bags in the front. And so I try to keep everything, as tidy as I can, especially on a really long one. But that's with the kids. Like if I'm taking a trip with my boys, and like what we did last year, that one was very, we had logistical meetings talking about, okay, this one's going to be 4 days. These are our goals. What does the time frame look like? What day? Where are we going to be on what time? And then we established some rules. And I think rules are important for a road trip so that everyone has the same agreements and no expectations. And so music, however it works out with your family or your person you're traveling with, I think it's important to have talk about it. Say, hey, what do you like to listen to? What are you thinking? And once you do it long enough, you just get into a groove with it. And I do think that's probably one of the biggest things is not enough people do enough long distance trips to get into a groove where you kind of understand it. It's like anything you do for multiple times for a long time. You find your rhythm and how to live together. And that's how over the road truckers are able to do 1 million miles a year or 300,000 miles a year. They just get into the groove of it, and that just becomes their everyday. So
I speaking of over the road truckers, there's a couple things that stand out as I think about road trips
Okay.
or long rides, and for the most part, just driving in general at this point. And their lessons from my grandfather, and his number one lesson as a 80-something-year-old, been a truck driver for 60 years doing logistics, says, you know, the number one way to make time on a trip?
Ah, okay. Well, I can't wait.
Keep the doors closed.
Oh, that's true.
He goes, that's the only thing that matters. Doesn't matter if you're going 82 versus 79.
Because you can't go fast enough to make up for 0.
Can't go fast enough to make up for 0. Because you want to get from A to B fast, keep the doors closed.
Are you familiar with the Cannonball Run?
I'm loosely.
Okay.
I've watched like.
Tell me you've watched the Burt Reynolds.
No,
movie
I was gonna say
from the 70s,
just
early
the
80s.
like it's. I don't even know if I'm thinking of the right thing. I'm thinking of dune buggies doing like 500 miles in Germany.
No, so that's like a Dakar rally kind of style. The Cannonball Run is a famous cross country race that started somewhere in the late 70s, and it leaves from the Gumball parking deck in New York City in Manhattan, and you drive to Portofino Hotel in California.
Wow.
And it's a measured distance. And if you can imagine, during the COVID, the record, like in the last 20 years, the record had only been broken like 5 times. In the last 3 weeks, it's been broken 4 because there's just been less people on the road. And if you are into long distance logistics, it's amazing because the average speed that they do is like 105 miles an hour over, I think the Ed Bullion and them did it, I think, again, and got it back in like 25 hours and some change, coast to coast.
I don't understand. Over 100 miles an hour.
That's
like,
the average
cops,
speed.
Like, not,
well, so that's the thing.
Like, call ahead of time.
So there's so many, because the trick is your average speed. Like you said, you got to keep the doors closed.
Yeah.
And so these guys have teams. So they use Waze, they use spotters. Some of them have thermal imaging, like night vision cameras, so they can try to find cops hiding on the side. They study historical police trap locations, historical data locations, construction projects. So there's a southern route and a northern route. The northern route is the fastest.
Yeah.
And but you make your time at the pit stops, not on the road.
Right.
And so these guys will have extra fuel tanks put in these cars. And all the ones that have broken it recently have all been luxury German sedans.
Wow.
Audi and Mercedes have been the 2 big ones.
I'm so fascinated by this. Okay, so no, I was not.
Yeah, but that's their whole, like, everyone will tell you it's not about how fast you can go, it's about how little you can stop.
Which is the pit stop game. Like, we watch Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh, yeah,
right?
exactly.
And like, that's a example in that movie where it's, you know, how quick can we be in these pit stops? And then when you talk about, like, just changing out the gas tank versus filling a gas tank.
They'll have like people waiting for them at gas stations holding the things. They roll up, pop the sides. They'll fill both tanks up at the same time.
Wow.
They'll switch drivers and they'll be off in 4 minutes.
Yeah. And wow. So Ford versus Ferrari, shout out, because there's a cool moment in that movie. But
yeah, that's the thing. You can't go fast enough to outrun zero. Yeah.
Huh. I can't get over, because I felt very fast with like a 72 mile an hour average.
Oh yeah, some of these, you know, because they're taking the last one was a E63, which is a 6.3 liter V8 twin turbocharged. Like, it's a rocket. Like,
shout out to the Cars episode.
Yeah. Like, it's designed because these cars are designed for the Autobahn.
Yeah.
They're designed to go 200 miles an hour and be safe while doing it.
What about? I wonder how. So, an example, my grandfather told a story, because the last 2 trips, this trip to Charleston is 26 the whole way, up to New Jersey feels like 81 is the whole way. It's not, but it's close. I wonder how they deal with states that are now doing like drone coverage. Like,
well, that's the other thing. They have spotters. They have people that will pre-run the course for them at 20 miles in front of them, because their closing speed is so high. They have these people staged.
Wow.
And so some of the states are obviously, from what I understand, worse than others.
Yeah, I imagine in reality, so I was thinking about like, what if they get a drone? So I imagine they're not worried about a ticket so much as having to stop. To deal with a
You
police
get a
officer.
ticket, you've already lost. There's no way you can make up that time.
But in Virginia, which is now drone coverage, they're just putting it in the mail.
Yeah.
And I guess that's not that big of a deal.
I guess unless you're doing 130 miles an hour.
And then you go to jail. I don't know.
They had talked about if you watch Vin Wiki YouTube channel at all, Ed's is one of the guys who broke the record and then started this hugely successful YouTube channel. Huge. Wow. But he had one, he was like, hey, anybody know where I can get a Predator drone? Because I think I could fly that in front of me faster the whole time looking for police officers on the road.
That's really cool.
So anyway.
And so, okay, so
that's a whole. But logistics of it are important. So, one of the things for the road trip I took for my 40th birthday was like we had to logistically figure out how far we could go in day one, and the answer is 32 hours. And so we drove straight.
You can't go 32 hours in day one.
Listen,
Come
man.
on, people. Listen. I'm better at math than that.
Time is a construct. Time is a construct. But so I decided to do an epic road trip. I'd never seen the Grand Canyon for my 40th, and I wanted to eat at this barbecue place in Arkansas that won it was the first barbecue joint to ever win a Beard Award. It was also the first, I think, African-American owned restaurant to ever get a Beard Award. And it was just this hole-in-the-wall Jones Barbecue Diner. And they have a Facebook page, which is amazing because if you ever make it there, you'll realize that it's not the kind of place that does social media. It's just Mr. Jones has been working there since he was 17. He must be in his 70s now. Wow. And it was legitimately some of the best barbecue ever had. It's just barbecue on white bread with a little bit of slaw. You can go to the refrigerator and get a knee-high or orange crush and a bag of chips. It's great. But so those were the two things. And so I ran the Google route and it was 6,400 miles from Asheville to the Grand Canyon, from the Grand Canyon to the barbecue joint, and then back. And then we looked at, okay, we've got 4 days to do it. What can we hit along the way? And so we found some national parks that we could camp at. Okay. But we set goals and rules. Like I had to see the Grand Canyon on my birthday, and we rolled up June 14th, 1:00. We were at the Grand Canyon. It was crazy. Within because my brother lives in Vegas, he drove up to meet us, and
not a bad trip from Vegas.
No. And it's like 3 hours for him. He drives a Tesla, just drives itself. But we said we'll be there any time between 12 and 4.
That's not bad.
And we rolled 12 and 2, and we said that the day before, and we hit it because the first rule was the car can't turn off day one. Like until we get to the Grand Canyon, the car cannot turn off. I rented this minivan, and so we drove 31 hours straight.
Car rental little rule I learned as a kid is drive it like you stole it.
Oh man. So interesting. So if you do have to rent a car for a road trip, these are two questions I highly recommend you ask. Does the unlimited mileage really mean unlimited mileage? And does the everything insurance really mean everything? Because
everything you need to hold on to the key.
Yeah. That's exactly right. If you don't have the key, it got stolen. And so when I went to Enterprise to rent a minivan because we were just going to straight abuse this thing, it was 3 of us that went, and the guy I had it rented for 4 days, and he's like, "Hey, you do anything fun with it?" Because it was a Thursday through Monday. I laughed and I was like, all right, before I answer that question, I need to know the answer to these two questions. And I asked the unlimited mileage. He goes, yeah, unlimited mileage. I'm like, no, for real. If I bring this thing back with 10,000 more miles, is that going to be okay? He laughed. He's like, yeah, that's not possible, but sure. And then number 2 is like, does anything all right, if this car rolls off the top of the Grand Canyon,
as a concept.
Yeah, as a concept. Yeah. Does this cover it? And he was like, oh, yeah, it would. And I'm like, perfect. And I was like, in that case, me and some friends are going to go drive to the Grand Canyon in the next 4 days and come back with 7,000 miles more on this thing than you had it when you gave it to me. And he just looked. He was like, all right. And he just handed me the keys. So, yeah.
Okay. So that is a level of organization and operation on a multi-day journey that I've never considered.
But day one, and I think the important part of long distance driving or road tripping is the mentality, the mental state, because you can get into a mental state where it's like this flow state of driving where you just kind of let go, and you just have to you just go, you just do your thing.
So that was my second point.
Nice.
Perfect.
Okay.
So the other note that I have from my grandfather that is something like it haunts me, or I'm it's a meditation, right? Like it's a thing. Is before I ever learned to drive, and then he's only been a passenger in my car a couple times.
Okay.
But he made it very clear that what your eyes are meant to do when you're in a car is scan the horizon, left to right, right to left.
Okay.
Pull it in, mirrors, back and front.
Yep.
And you just repeat that, and you see everything that
and
could possibly
happen
before it happens.
Think about that. Yeah.
And he goes, and when you're in traffic, you follow the trucks because the trucks can see what's going on the horizon further than you can. I was like, okay. And so I'm like,
plus they have radio and they're talking to each other.
They're talking, all those things. And so I'm constantly, almost obsessively, like scanning the horizon, watching it in, looking in my mirrors, watching it in. And I'm wondering, are there any, that meditation that you're talking about, for me, it is not the same. We talked about the meditation of like riding a motorcycle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I feel a lot more comfortable and safe in a vehicle, go figure.
With 5 to 7 airbags.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a different type of meditation. But I'm wondering, what do you think, or what are you doing when you're in the actual driver's seat?
Same. I'm always I prefer to drive on a road trip.
Yeah.
Are you a prefer to drive?
So in the 10-hour drive, Sarah drove for an hour and 25 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was just because I had to take a call where I wanted to be more focused than driving.
I'm a driver. I'd much rather be driving a road trip no matter the distance. And I'm doing the exact same thing because I've always just driven big automobiles that are hard to stop. They don't have great brakes. So I'm always I'm a very aware, like I have the routine and I mirrors and a couple of lanes music isn't as important to me as long as there is something happening in the background.
I need some noise.
Yeah. Podcasts are okay. Like I've been getting into podcasts lately on my long distance stuff when it's just me. What I really have always liked is live albums. I'll always play live albums.
It sounds like a good.
It'll keep me awake. Although I do have a friend who recommended this trick to keep me awake on a long distance drive. You crack your window. You ready for this? Crack your window about this much. Take $100 bill. Put it right here and hold it out the window. I promise you won't go to sleep.
That's really interesting.
It's so funny.
I've never heard of that. I thought, fresh air.
No. Exactly. That's what I thought too. He's like fresh air, $100 bill. I'm like, where is he going with this?
That's really funny.
And then obviously the no-dos and the uppers and the amphetamines and all that, the crazy illicit drug use. No, I'm kidding.
Well, so like that's my, cracked open a can of stories. My grandfather's got a bunch on repeat, but one in particular like stood out that I hadn't heard before. He's like, something. I ended up going to the doctor. He's like, I took a bunch of these pills and wherever. I'm like, Mama,
I had an erection for 3 hours.
Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I was out and back to Wisconsin like 3 times in a week. And he's like, and so like one of the guys said, like, take these and you'll get there. And he's like, I went to the doctor.
That's old school right there, baby.
I hadn't slept in like 5 days or something. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, Pablo, you're talking about? And I'm like, hey, everyone in the room. He's talking about using like amphetamine. This isn't, no one else thinks this is weird.
Yeah, it's just what they did back in the day. And the
guy's like, how many did you take? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, oh my God.
All right, now, will you pee in a container in the car? Because truckers are notorious for the gallon jugs of pee being tossed out the window.
If it were a guy's trip, I'd be up to it.
Yeah.
Never with Sarah. I'd rather just stop, get some fresh water. But like if we were on some sort of like road trip, need to get to a place on time, and it's a bunch of guys, I mean, it makes more sense than then if it's my wife and I and we're going to Charleston, I gotta go pee. But I mean, that said, I just went on. I don't remember where I was driving.
Because peeing in a bottle on a road trip is more about not causing the inconvenience for everyone to stop.
Right. And I mean, I don't think my wife would ever feel so inconvenienced to have to stop.
Okay.
Like, that's not in her disposition. That's it. If you were like, hey, and you went through all the logistics, and I'm like, oh my God, 90 minutes until our next scheduled stop, I'd grab a bottle and I'd make it work. Well, I remember what it was. I drove an hour and 30 minutes I think this is what it was. I drove an hour and 30 minutes to take the motorcycle driver's test, or written test, and I think it was on that trip. And anyway, in the last month, I pulled off of a highway to the shoulder,
and
to like a side fire lane road thing, and took a knee like I was tying my shoe, you know what I mean? and made a bathroom break. There were no bottles to be had, and also I don't think driving and doing that makes any sense. You'd have to be for me, I'd have to be a passenger.
It's difficult. I have peed while driving. I'm not gonna. It's very, very hard. You have to slide the seat all the way back. You have to get right up to the edge.
You're doing some sort of spot.
Yeah.
So I've not done that. Would consider. I do think that it makes time, and I am very much an efficiency. So like while doing that, I'm counting the amount of seconds. So that at the very least, I'd be like, guys, I had only stopped for 104 seconds, and a cop came, and now I'm arrested. You need to get me.
Indecent exposure.
But I know I have not peed in a bottle. Would consider it.
We took a portable little potty with us when we had kids, when I drove the excursion, and we would just, like, if the kids had to pee, they'd just go pee in there.
That's so interesting. One of the thoughts that I had is how time must not matter when you have a pet or an animal.
Yeah.
And like, I know that, because one of the things I'm like, I need to work on how I feel about timing and my assumptions around how timing is going to work out and how far we're going to get and how fast we're going to go. I just have to imagine early days of a little human or a four-legged animal.
It's maddening sometimes.
You have to stop. You have to look around. They might not go. What are you going to do?
They're not all on the same schedule, so you start driving an hour later, another one's got to go. It is maddening just because no one gets on the same schedule. And that was the reason why when we would travel, when the kids were young in the truck, we had the little small like training potty that we had in the bathroom. I would just take it, fill it with I'd put a plastic bag, fill it with cat litter and let them pee in that while we were driving down the road. Because if you didn't, we would be stopping every hour.
I think that makes some sense.
It worked fine for us.
Yeah.
I mean, Ashley might have used it once or twice too.
Our scheduled stop is 90 minutes.
But yeah, it's you become much more flexible. And angry when you have children that you have to road trip with.
Interesting.
But you're making memories. And they're going to remember those. And I am a little bit like, I want to make a road trip a little bit awful for my kids. I don't want to make it too comfortable, just so they have that memory of like,
third row in the station wagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Backwards.
Yeah, it was so hot or it was so loud.
Yeah. I think it's fair. My note on podcasts is I can't remember what I was listening to. I think it was a Malcolm Gladwell thing, but like your brain, like it had something to do with audiobooks. And if you're moving through space, listening to audio that requests that you think about space, you can't do both.
Okay.
And so
that seems about right, because the times I have done any type of storied podcast, there were parts where I just lose focus. Like I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah. And so, in the head-to-head battle of losing focus on the road and losing focus on the story, I do my best, but we've tended towards we'll do some style of music for about an hour, and then these 40-minute or 30-minute podcasts as like some sort of audio break. But I am very I love that there's sound, ideally music that I'm familiar with, because singing is something that I can do passively while I'm doing my checks.
Let me ask you this real quick. What about musical soundtracks?
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, especially if I know the song or know the musical. I love.
I will say Miss Saigon
Oh, so I don't know that.
gets heavy rotation. Little Shop of Horrors gets heavy rotation, and Les Mis. Mm.
So
Because
you want to know one of my guilty pleasures? This
Okay,
is a
yeah.
pivot. This is off track. I'll listen to vocal coaches do reviews and like
oh yeah,
like live responses to musical numbers or
I've seen
live
those people.
performances.
Yeah.
So I'll watch that on YouTube, and they'll be talking about like, oh, that's a high G over C, and I'm like, oh my.
I wish I
it
could do
doesn't
that.
mean anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't actually mean anything.
No.
But I find it fascinating.
But I think for me, it helps to bridge that gap. Like when you were talking about moving through space and stories, like I can visualize that story while listening to the music without having to focus on the story.
And if it's at all known or expected, then you can visualize it even more passively.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not constructing this new world, and I need to.
Oh yeah, that's the thing with Les Mis. Like I'm seeing the play in my mind. Yeah, the live performance in my mind while listening to it. It's so good.
Road trip. Okay, so we have thought out, planned out.
All right, what's your preferred drink and food of choice while road tripping?
I mean, I'm H2O. I'm water boy.
Okay.
I'm Bobby Boucher.
Bobby Boucher the whole way. Okay.
Gatorade sucks. So water.
You and all your fancy foosball friends.
Yeah. So give me a moderate amount of caffeine before 11 o'clock in the morning. Talked about that in the coffee episode.
Yep.
And then I'm trying to be water the rest of the way. Potentially, but sugar is a fake out for me. Like sugar is very much a flash in the pan.
Okay.
And so sodas crash me, and that is not actually helpful.
Okay.
If I'm doing a kill time with food in my mouth, sunflower seeds is a good.
Oh yeah.
Time
chirping.
killer.
That's what they call that in the South.
What's it called?
Chirping. Yeah, because you're a bird.
Yeah, that's fun.
What's your flavor?
Just traditional salt.
That correct answer.
Fun.
I can't get into the ranch and barbecue flavored.
I can, but it's like a mouthful at a time. Then I feel like I'm like, oh my god, do I have I feel like
I love it when I feel like the salt is eating the side of my cheek. Yeah, that's when I know I'm in the right spot.
Oh, I never dipped a moment in my life, but I'm like, maybe I should see someone.
Your jaw. You're
like
gonna have to have your jaw taken out.
Dude, I hope not. So that's a cool time killer for me.
Okay.
I love sunflower seeds from since forever. And then for snacks, really hard to say. I'd prefer like trying to figure out a sandwich situation.
Okay.
Like proper two pieces of bread and food than 5 packs of chips to get the same calories.
All right.
How about you? I bet you there's some good answers. Like beef jerky sounds like fun for me.
Yep, that's what
Slim Jim type stuff, calories and fat.
I drink vitamin water, the purple drink, grape drink, I think it's called the Triple X or whatever it is. I get that one. It's like pomegranate and some stuff. And then beef jerky is if I need to stay awake while eating, beef jerky is because it'll get me to it. But I'm buying whatchamacallit bars.
What are they called?
Whatchamacallit.
No.
Gotcha. You got me with the got you. So those are my guilty pleasures. But I won't eat a meal in the car.
You won't do it.
I won't do it. I've always I want to get out and eat.
Yeah.
Unless it's roller meat, which is the little things that sit there and roll around all day in the gas stations.
Yeah. You eat those?
Oh yeah, man. That was part of the rules of our last road trip. One meal had to come entirely from a gas station.
Dang.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't? Would you, if you were a passenger? Would you eat it while in a seat?
Probably.
Strictly
snacks? I would. I probably would. Yeah. I prefer to stop and have a meal outside of the car. But yeah,
I would make up for that time, Miles.
I know. I'll factor it in.
Okay.
But yeah, the roller meat's where it's at.
I heard.
And the powdered, or if it's a real true road trip, I'm getting those little chocolate covered mini donuts. I love those things.
Like those for me, like the juice isn't worth the squeeze on most things that are sugary for me at places, because I would then be like a detriment to the team. Like I would be dangerous if you put me in the cockpit after a donut.
Ooh.
Like I must have some sort of blood sugar thing. Like I don't know, but I wouldn't trust me. And so I try to avoid it on travel days or even the days before a travel day.
Dang.
Here's a question for you. Are there roadside gas station fill-up spots that you will pass others over to get to?
Correct. Yeah.
And then the next is, when thinking about food, are you like, let's hit a Wendy's in this town, or let's Google the mom and pop diner?
Ooh, good question.
You know what I mean? Like, how do you think about food stops?
I have rankings for, like, if I can find a QT, which is Quick Trip, which is huge here in the Southeast. If I can find one of those things are like shopping in a grocery store.
Yeah.
And so that's the number one. If I can't find one of those, I go to, because I'm buying diesel fuel, they always have diesel. I'll go to Sphinx. Sphinx is a more regional upstate South Carolina.
Never seen it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any in North Carolina. I'll go there because they use a biodiesel blend. So I'll buy from there. And then if I'm on, like, out west or something like that, I'm looking at Love's and all the Flying J's, the real ones, because they go through so much diesel fuel that, you know, they've always got good fuel.
Is that a thing, like thinking about the volume that this place might do?
Sure, because you can get bad diesel because of how water and diesel interact. They don't dissolve into each other, and so you can get half a tank of water instead of half a tank of diesel fuel in places where the diesel fuel tanks don't get filled but once every 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
So, so it's important for me and
so you're looking for like a truck stop.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because they'll have better places. They have better roller meat than most, and the bathrooms are bigger. But no, I'm always looking for that hole in the wall place, and I'm always trying to find the anywhere. Like, I want to get off the interstate to the closest small town to find whatever, like, local place there is to
Got
eat.
it. And you just Google Maps to try and figure that out?
Yep. I'll just use Google Maps and then use the review for what the, you know, for what's available, and then on the type of food.
Heard.
Yeah.
So when Sarah and I were driving to I don't remember where it was last. I think that's if there's a single shortcoming, it's like I don't have enough foresight on things like food.
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, so here's how long the trip's going to take. Here's how many stops we might want to take, and here's how much gas will cost roughly. Like, I'll back that out, but I won't be like, all right, so at 4 hours we'll be about here. Let's look at food.
Okay, no, I'll do that. But I'll plan my leaving time, because there is a barbecue joint in Conley Springs, North Carolina. It's only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so if I've got to go to Charlotte, or I've got to head east on 40, I will plan when I leave based upon when I can get there for lunch or dinner on any of those days.
But that wasn't the first time that you went east on 40. It was like after hearing about this?
I heard. Yeah, this was a number of years ago. I heard about, JD Smokehouse.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an oversight. But one of the many things that I love about Sarah, we just hit our 1 year anniversary.
Congrats.
Is that sometimes I'll be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's going on over there? Because I'll just be singing to myself, or like, I spend hours, we haven't talked. I'm like, hey, what's going on over there? And she's like, oh, just looking up food 2 hours from now or whatever. I'm like, that's what's up.
Yeah, that would be me for sure. I'm always like, food is the next goal.
Yeah.
Like, how many eats before we get to where we're going?
Yeah, that's her Vicky Valancourt is just thinking about stealing, LT's car over there. She's just thinking about what we're gonna stop.
Oh man. Yeah. But like, will you take a gamble on a dive spot on a road trip?
100%.
Okay.
I'd prefer it.
Would she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dive with a
like
4.
You pull up in the parking lot and you look around and you're like, well, it's got a good Google reviews. But...
Yes. So the prereq would be Google review.
Okay.
Like, if I'm driving and I see Old Hank's barbecue, and it looks like it could be a decent but also bad barbecue.
Yeah.
We're not just walking into the place.
Okay.
Like, we're going to go online and see, the people that gave it 1 star, do they sound like they suck and also work at the other barbecue place in town?
Yeah.
Like, is there a valid reason why these places got whatever high scores or bad scores? but yeah, I would prefer give my money to Hank's Barbecue over Wendy's 100 times.
What's your prefer if you have to eat fast food and Chick-fil-A isn't available because we all know. What is the hierarchy of fast food for you?
When I was a kid, McDonald's was my number one.
Okay.
I've never eaten off a kid's menu my entire life. As like it's just a thing that I learned not too long ago. And so like Big Macs, when I think about what a fast food meal was, it was a Big Mac.
Okay.
That like special sauce barbecue or whatever was the mayo and.
So that's where you're stopping these days?
No.
Okay.
Typically, just wouldn't stop.
Had to. No options. Have to eat. Only fast food. But every fast food is available to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, West Coast In-N-Out sounds real good. I think Five Guys wins the head-to-head with my taste preferences today over McDonald's. Not necessarily over In-N-Out. I've only had a couple. But I would choose a Five Guys or something that feigns
at being a
higher touch, higher quality, real meat.
Like you wouldn't even slum it. You wouldn't even.
I definitely would. Like if we're all on a road trip.
All right, so let me ask you this.
If it's a guy's
Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, KFC, Arby's, and that's it. Which one are you picking out of that group? Gotta eat.
I don't have a horse in the race. I'd eat at all of them. I'd eat at any of them.
Okay, all right.
Arby's, I know least about their.
What if there was a
menu.
Subway thrown in there?
Also eat at Subway.
Which one would you prefer?
It's
I'm backing you in a corner here.
No, but I
answer the question, Tony.
So I would do
answer the question.
I would do like double cheeseburgers with fries, no soda. You can take the soda, throw it away. I don't need your soda, but I will. Yes, I will do the extra large fries.
Yes, okay.
And I'll eat nastiness. I'll clog the artery. It's not to me. It's not like a matter of like, oh, too many bad calories. It's just like I wouldn't rather give the money to a smaller business who has the same crap ingredients.
And they're getting it from the same Cisco truck.
Getting it from the same Cisco, same wholesale, suppliers. To me, it's just. The romance of helping a smaller business.
No, for sure. And that's my whole thing too. And I've found some great little places along the way. Just like I'm in Landrum, South Carolina, there's this little hamburger joint. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. Like if it's 2:00 in the morning and there's a Wendy's, I'm ordering $7, whatever I don't even know what they're called at Wendy's, but I'll eat 5 of them.
What the name of the founder, Junior, they have like a, anyway, I'll think of it.
Yeah, I'd regress.
I'm picking Wendy's. I'm feeling for some reason Wendy's is the highest quality junk hamburger out there.
I don't disagree. Okay. I notice I said don't disagree. Double negative on the opposite of agree.
Wow.
I don't disagree. I don't have a horse in the race. I've eaten so rarely at them because Sarah spoils me mostly, but
I love backing foodies into a corner. It's like you have to eat at one of these incredibly not great places. What
I would if I'm left alone, it would be the one that shows up first if it's at a rest stop and they're all together. Yeah. Probably Wendy's, though I really liked Arby's ad campaigns recently.
Okay.
We got the beef. Or we got the meat.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's great. So like for marketing reasons, I would test an Arby's to get some exposure.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay.
That said, if there's Bill's late night pizza spot
around
the corner.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to know that exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all right. Gas station bathrooms.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
All right. On a level of
I've never been happier to mandatory to wear a mask in my entire life. so
that's a side benefit I haven't thought about.
Mask, gloves.
Are you particular about your gas station bathrooms? Because I will admittedly use and have used any and everything, no matter the condition.
I would go into,
Will you leave one gas station to go to another gas station to use the bathroom?
No, because if I'm at a gas station to use the bathroom, I got to use the bathroom.
Okay.
And so I will. Now, So in a number one scenario, all bets are off. Wet floors, that's fine. Whatever. What
Number two is the only thing that matters when you're talking about gas station bathrooms.
And so in that world, wall sits, air squats,
the hover.
I'm laying down, a bird's nest. Like situations kind of dictate how I'm gonna act about it. But I would. The two things that make me most upset are very, very low light.
Okay.
To where it's like, I don't know what's happening in this room.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Blessing and a curse. I assume curse, though. Like, I'm like, if I can't see, I'd rather know.
If you can't see it, it's got to be bad.
That there are roaches in that corner than not know because of lighting. And then just no soap.
Yeah, the no soap.
That's it. I'll do some weird stuff with the promise that moments later
you can get clean.
I get to exit the operating room.
It's the where you have the one square and you tear the center out and put your finger in the middle, and then you take it and it's clean. Go wash your hands.
Yeah. So that is. Okay. I think that's my. That's so my thesis. If there's soap, I'll do most things. I'll do most.
The promise of soap. I like that. That needs to be the title of a book. I'm trying to think what else from a road trip. Like those are really the hardships. Bathrooms.
You ever have to hoof it for gasoline or?
I've only ran out of fuel once in my life, and I was 18, and I had or 19. I flipped old classic cars to pay for college, and I had a 71 Corvette that the gas gauge was off on it, and I didn't know it. And I ran out of gas on Highway 11 in South Carolina, which is this main thoroughfare that basically connects 25, Highway 25, and also 26 all the way to 85, so you can take it to Atlanta. So how we would use it here in Asheville is we would go down, hit south, hit 25 south, hit Highway 11 to cross over, hit 85 to go to Atlanta versus going through 441 through Dillsboro. So it's a very at that time in upstate South Carolina, it was a very underutilized road. But it connects to like Caesar's Head State Park and Table Rock State Park, so it's absolutely beautiful to drive. And I had this old Corvette, and my girlfriend at the time had T-tops, so I had the tops off, and we're riding down the road, and it's this great little spot, and I just pull over. She's like, "Really, you ran out of gas?" Like she thought I was about to make a move on her. She thought it was like the old running out of gas trick. I'm like, "No, legitimately, I'm out of gas." And so, luckily, there's only like 3 gas stations on that whole road, and I was like an eighth of a mile. I could see it from where I pulled over. So, yeah, that's the only time that's ever happened to me, which is nice. Yeah. Because I'm so kind of, I don't know, militant about staying.
Well, I imagine you only need one of those experiences to prefer 3/4 of
my whole thing is like, if someone calls right now and says, if my sisters call right now and say, "Miles, we need you to come home. Mom's not doing great." Like, I want to be able to get in the car and drive there. I don't want to get in the car, have to buy fuel, and then get there 5 or 10 minutes late, and they're like, "You missed her," and I'm like, "What?"
Wow. So listen,
that's my whole thing.
That makes sense to me. I got a buddy. It was one of the, so the idea of keeping the doors closed. A mentor friend of mine has a book, a journal that he's keeping, calls it Cowboy Wisdom. Right. Okay. So the idea of these moments of advice that are bigger than the advice itself, make doing the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. That's like cowboy wisdom. Okay. I want to make good time, keep the doors closed.
Ooh.
Right? Cowboy wisdom. I had a buddy, and it's just been important to me since then. We were sitting down for what appeared to be a night of drinks. And he made an order. He showed up late, got it for himself, and he paid for it. And I'm like, why not just open a tab? We're going to be here all night. He goes, if I ever want to leave, I just want to leave.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Herd on this gas tank world.
Yeah, that's always my thing. That's the lesson I use on people in my house who don't keep their tank as full as mine. What if I called you and said I needed you to drive to South Carolina right now to see a family member?
And with that, people, this is an episode on road trips.
Road trips. Go do them. They're fun. Make memories.
Keep your tank 3/4 to full.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep the doors closed.
Yeah. Keep the doors closed. Keep Les Mis playing.
Keep Les Mis.
Sing on and get that $100 bill and hold it out the window.
That's it. It's as simple as that.
Ah, that's it. Music.
Man. We're back.